Today we're looking at the DJI Action 5 Pro and the GoPro Hero 13. Which one of these top-end action cameras is the best option in 2025? We're going to find out today. Now, these aren't the kind of cameras I usually look at. I usually review or test 360 cameras, but you know, it's been a while since I have had a action camera in my kit, and I need one. I want one. Occasionally, now and then, you want something that's just a little bit higher quality, a little bit more versatile, and a little bit safer to use on these kind of more crazy stunts. So I am trying to make a decision between these two. These are the two best out right now if you look online. This would be my first DJI product, not my first GoPro. I've heard a lot of good things about DJI in terms of innovation, in terms of good value for money, but GoPro have a worthy reputation of creating really high-end products. I've gone into this without reading any other reviews or watching any other videos about these cameras, so I'm going to show you some side-by-side comparisons as I go through the main specs of both of these cameras. For the Action 5 Pro, we have a maximum resolution of 4K, and that can go all the way up to 120 frames per second, compared to the GoPro Hero 13, which has a max resolution of 5.3K, and that can go up to 60 frames per second. But on the flip side, the DJI has a larger sensor, 1-1.3 inches, compared to 1-1.9 inches in the GoPro Hero 13. The DJI can shoot 40 megapixel photos, whereas the GoPro can shoot 27 megapixel photos. Both cameras have 10-bit video capability. Both feature internal stabilization, which works really, really well actually. I've tested them both, including horizon lock. The DJI can shoot up to 32 times slow motion, and the GoPro can shoot 13 times slow motion. DJI can shoot in 2 aspect ratios, that's 4:3 or 16:9. The GoPro can shoot 1 extra with 4:3, 16:9, and 8:7. So those are some of the headline specs when it comes to video quality, image quality, but what's it like in real life? You've already had a look at some of the videos I've been showing you, but really what it comes down to is that age-old question of whether resolution is better or is a larger sensor better. With the DJI limited, I guess, to 4K, but with a larger sensor. The GoPro shooting higher resolution, 5.3K, but with a smaller sensor and a less powerful chip. The chip in the DJI is more modern, reduces the amount of energy it needs, is able to do more processing, therefore maybe some more advanced modes, which I think there are actually. Having a look at some daylight comparisons, these are pretty good conditions to shoot in. You can tell a difference. There is definitely a difference between the two. Here the difference isn't as extreme as we're going to see later. It may be a matter of how you prefer your colors to look. I do think the DJI looks a bit more realistic. Just to point out here that the settings for these are the same. They're both on medium sharpness. They're both on the neutral color. They may call them slightly different things, but no boosting in color, no HDR. And despite the GoPro having a higher resolution, I do think the DJI video looks a bit more realistic, looks truer to what is in reality. And when you're filming selfie shots, which many people do with these kinds of cameras, once again, I can already tell the DJI is picking up colors way more realistically than the GoPro. When we're cropping into our videos, which will be necessary if you want to use the stabilization, then the GoPro will lose less quality because it has more pixels to play with. But even if we artificially crop in, I still see the DJI really holding up well. I think the sharpness is retained quite well, even though it's lower resolution. I am someone who prefers a larger sensor than just inflating the resolution. I think being able to capture more light is way more important than having more pixels, but that will be up to you to decide. You may prefer the color profile of the GoPro. DJI claims it has 13 stops of dynamic range in the camera, which basically means when you go from light to dark, or if you see contrast in the sky, for example, clouds, that you should be able to see way more details than if you had a lower dynamic range. Now, that is true. I do see a difference, and I do think it is doing a very good job considering it's an action camera. The dynamic range is good. It's certainly better than the GoPro. It's not quite as good as DJI claims. Now, when we move on to nighttime video, that is really where, in my comparisons, I was actually quite shocked at how much better the DJI performed. The DJI actually has a dedicated night mode, so obviously select that. Honestly, I didn't see that much difference between the night mode and the normal video mode, but in both cases, The DJI performed way better in these really difficult lighting conditions. This may be due to the larger sensor, this may be due to some internal processing thanks to the more powerful chipsets, but it just outperforms the GoPro in every scenario where there is low light or artificial lighting at nighttime. It's really, yeah, GoPro really needs to step up their game. If you are at all interested in shooting at nighttime, then you can obviously see the difference here. It's not really, you can't really argue that the GoPro is doing better here. So unfortunately, this one does definitely go to the DJI Action 5 Pro. When it comes to shooting slow motion, both cameras have very decent options and shoot up to 4K at 120 frames per second. But there's also this special mode where you can go into your video after you've shot it and then slow it down even more, like a really super slow motion. The GoPro has a similar mode where you can shoot bursts of 5-second slow motion video at 120 frames per second at 5.3K, but you can go all the way up to 400 frames per second at 720p. Moving on to some stabilization tests. I'm actually really shocked at how much stabilization has come along in these small action cameras. Before, I mean, even 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't really do that much with these kind of cameras. That was too extreme because they just would not be able to handle it, in my opinion. Actually, thanks to some advancements because of 360 cameras, the stabilization you can get from normal action cameras, single lens action cameras, is really amazing. Each camera has their own stabilization mode, but they work basically the same way. The DJI has Rock Steady, and there are 3 modes: Rock Steady Plus, and Horizon Lock. And the GoPro has its Hyper Smooth. It's a Hyper Smooth on, Hyper Smooth Plus, and you also have Horizon Lock. You also have a kind of auto boost in the settings, which does, again, just help a little bit with the more extreme action stuff. The only difference I found between the two is that the Horizon Lock in the GoPro does work when you spin all the way around, as you can see in this mirror, whereas it kind of only works in the DJI if you spin half the way around. So I'm not sure in how many scenarios you're going to be spinning all the way around. I guess if you're in a, I don't know. There's not that many scenarios. But in general, the stabilization, I think, works really well in both, and this would not be a reason to choose between the two. Now remember, the more advanced or better stabilization setting you choose in either of these cameras, the more the image will be zoomed in, so you will lose a little bit of quality. And that is also the case depending on what field of view options you choose. Now, they both have several field of view options, including linear, which will just take out any of that warping effect. The GoPro has one more option with a super view, which is a super wide angle view, so that may be more useful for POV shots, or if you're mounting your camera to your chest for bike shots. So I've shown you a lot of footage there. You can obviously, I'm sure you're deciding for yourself right now, but just focusing on each individual camera for a second. The main advantages I found of the GoPro is obviously the higher resolution. If you are concerned about that, that may be important if you are wanting to view on a large screen, if you want to make content that's going to be viewed on a larger screen than a laptop or phone. It also has the useful 8:7 format, which can be either used to make vertical or horizontal videos in the same shot, so you don't have to capture, or you can choose later which one you want to do. And like I said, it has a slightly wider field of view option and also has internal GPS, which may be important for some people who like to track their location while they're using their camera. But that is pretty much where the innovation ends with the GoPro. And I know for a fact it's been quite similar camera for the past few years. Now, the DJI has larger sensors, as we talked about, and I think that is the more important upgrade, or that is a more important thing to have in a camera, larger sensors. The night mode absolutely crushes the GoPro in every test that I did. You can get some really decent quality footage even in really difficult lighting conditions. And another mode that I've not talked about in the DJI is subject tracking. Now, this is something that I didn't know these cameras could even do. You can select this mode in the video settings, and it basically tracks your face. As long as you remain in the frame of the camera, it will automatically kind of reframe your video to make sure that whatever you're selecting as the subject remains in the center of the video. That is really awesome for some, especially vlogging shots. If you want to track something while you're on a cycling ride or skiing, someone in front of you. You can obviously do this in editing as well, but this just saves some time. The downside is that it's limited to 2.7K, but if you're shooting stuff for a phone, that is still going to be more than good enough. And if we move on to the physical comparison, this is also where I am impressed with the Action 5. Both cameras have two screens, that is true, but the DJI's is brighter, and also both of them are touchscreen, even the front one, which I've actually found really useful. You can change settings, you can change aspect ratios, you can change to slow motion, especially if you're shooting a lot of vlogging, selfie videos. It is a little bit annoying to have to keep turning it around, changing the settings, turning it back. Like, it just saves a little bit of time. It is really, really useful. And moving on to something really important now, the battery life. I found the battery life in the GoPro to be really bad. Like, it's just, even as I've had this on, just doing this video, like filming, it's lost about 15% just by being on idle. I always have the front screen off in the GoPro just to save battery, whereas I can have the screen on in the DJI and it lasts just a lot longer. I haven't tested them exactly, but I've been using them both at the same time, and the GoPro is always the first one to run out. But they're both really premium products. I kind of prefer the how the GoPro handles its buttons. They're easy to press. How it handles its menus. I like how you can have a lot of custom menus in the GoPro, so you can go ahead and select those really quickly. That is a really good way to set up your camera. Now, also, I was really pleasantly surprised to find out that the Action 5 has internal memory as well as obviously room for an SD card. And I was actually really good, because the first time I took the DJI out, well, both cameras out to test, I threw an SD card in there without even realizing it was like 95% full. But thankfully, when I turned it on, it had the option to use the internal memory, so I didn't have to come all the way home and change. The DJI has a magnetic mount which you can just hold and pop on and off, whereas the GoPro's mount is built in. I don't really have a preference between these two. They're both stay on. Like, as long as it stays on and it doesn't fall off, then great. Like, I don't really mind. So guys, that's it. That's my comparison. Like I said at the start, I went into this pretty blind. I did not have a look at any other videos or reviews of both of these cameras before I started using them. And obviously, as I've been making this video, I made my decision. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with the DJI, because not only does it just have more innovations, the subject tracking, the night mode, the touch screen at the front, it's also a little bit cheaper. So overall, I think better value for money. Not to say that the GoPro is awful. I think the high resolution is still worth considering, and particularly the 8:7 format I think is a really, really useful format for any content creator, because it just gives you so much more flexibility. I think those two are the key features of the Hero 13, and as well as maybe the GPS. I like shooting at nights. I do a lot of night shots. So for me, the Action 5 Pro wins this time. So that's it, guys. I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions about either of these cameras, please let me know. I'll be doing more reviews of different kinds of cameras and tech in the coming weeks and months. So feel free to subscribe if you kind of like my style. But until then, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye.